This farm-to-fork presentation follows the supply chain for roasted coffee beans from the growing stage to the final retail stage.
Coffee is one of the most highly consumed beverages in the world, averaging over 2 billion cups being consumed each day. Coffee is known to be one of the top agricultural export products in each of its many exporting countries. There are two varieties of coffee plants, Arabica and Robusta. The different varieties can be found cultivated in many different areas around the world and often differ in aroma, flavor, and acidity. A large majority of the coffee beans grown in the world come from South America, Africa, and Southeast Asia, with Brazil being the highest producing country. There are many steps that go into getting the coffee we know and love, from the trees the beans grow on to the cup we drink from in the morning. The process begins with producers or farmers in the exporting countries who are growing and processing the beans, continuing on to the exporters, importers, and many other intermediaries, and finally ending with retailers and consumers.
The first component of the supply chain is the producers, and the first step in coffee production is growing. Coffee beans, known as cherries, while still on the tree and prior to being processed, grow at an optimal temperature of 25 degrees Celsius, making them the perfect crop to be grown in hot, humid countries, typically found along the equator. Coffee trees normally do not mature and produce beans until 4 to 7 years of age. The trees are very susceptible to dramatic weather events such as heavy rains and droughts, so supply of coffee beans is dependent on weather events and growing conditions.
The second step in coffee production is harvesting. Harvesting is done mainly by hand picking, which makes it very labor intensive. Cherries do not grow at the same rate on the trees, so producers must investigate the trees multiple times. When cherries ripen, they change from green to red.
The third step of coffee production is processing. The goal of processing is to remove the outer covering and the pulpy fruit from the cherry, leaving the bean. There are two methods of processing called dry and wet processing. In dry processing, beans get sorted and dried naturally in the sun for 2 to 4 weeks or until the cherry is ready to shed its skin. The beans are laid out flat and turned regularly during this process. At this stage of production, value is added due to the drying processing being very labor intensive.
The other type of processing is wet processing. This process requires a very large quantity of water and much more equipment than dry processing. Beans are fermented and then washed either by hand or mechanically with the goal of removing the pulp. Beans are dried mechanically in this process.
The second component of the supply chain is the mills and intermediaries. The fourth step in the coffee production is milling. A milling machine is used to remove any remaining outside layer of the bean. At this stage, a bean will go through many other small processes such as hulling, sorting, and grading. Value is added at this stage of production since beans are graded. Higher quality beans will be sorted together and sold for higher prices.
The third component of the supply chain and fifth step in coffee production is exporting. Dried beans are packaged into large sacks that are typically 60 pounds and given to the exporters. The type of bags that they are sealed in and the duration of shipping are both important as beans are sensitive to moisture at this stage. Beans are transported by a variety of methods including cargo ships, trucks, and trains. The importers of these beans are generally large coffee companies.
The fourth component of the supply chain is the importers. The sixth step in coffee production is roasting. During the roasting process, beans change from green to different shades of brown, depending on the length of roasting. Beans are generally roasted between 380 and 475 degrees Fahrenheit. Once roasted, beans are distributed to packagers. At this stage, value is added as beans can be roasted many different ways and purchasing costs of the different types vary. The fifth component of the supply chain is the distributing companies. The seventh step of coffee production is packaging. Packaging is used to prepare coffee beans for purchase by consumers. Coffee is enclosed in bags in order to protect it from sunlight, moisture, and oxygen. At this stage, value added is influenced by the use of colored bags, labels, a variety of sizes, and different flavors.
The sixth component of the supply chain is the retailers. The eighth step of coffee production is grinding. Beans can be ground into specific fineness either by machine or by hand. Consumers can choose to grind coffee beans themselves using home grinders. Grinding is typically done by retailers such as coffee shops and cafes, but sometimes coffee is pre-ground and sold at grocery stores and other retail locations. Pre-grinding adds no value to beans as the flavor of freshly ground coffee is more desirable.
The final product of this very lengthy supply chain is a bag of roasted coffee beans. Coffee beans can be purchased at many different locations, including coffee shops, cafes, and grocery stores. The average bag of coffee beans sells for between $8 and $15. Prices vary depending on bag size, flavor, and other factors.
This graph shows the annual change in the production of coffee over the past 10 years. In 2008, the global production of coffee was 120 million 60-pound bags of beans. The level of production has been increasing, and in 2018, production was up to about 160 million 60-pound bags of beans. That is over 9 billion pounds of coffee beans.
This graph is depicting the annual changes of the price of coffee over the past 10 years. In 2009, the price of coffee was just over $1 per pound. The market has seen some fairly big increases, but also witnessed some fairly large decreases. In 2018, the price was around $1.30 per pound.
This graph is depicting the average retail price of roasted coffee during the years of 2007 to 2017. The market witnessed both increases and decreases to price over this time. In 2007, the price per pound was sitting at just over $5, and in 2017, the price had gone up to just over $6 per pound.
This graph is showing the consumption of coffee in Canada in years 2010 to 2018. In 2010, consumption was approximately 4.25 million kilogram bags. Recently, in 2018, consumption was up to just under 4.7 million 60 kilogram bags.